Afghanistan faces catastrophe, according to the UN, forcing its people to desperate measures. This baby has just been sold so that her parents can feed the rest of their children.
Another person came up to one of our team and asked if we'd like to buy their child. The desperation and the urgency of this situation is hard to put in words.
The UN says help is needed now, but international aid has been stopped as the world debates how to deal with the Taliban. Also tonight, an increase in the national living wage to £9.50 an hour will be included in the Chancellor's budget on Wednesday. A warning on climate change. The world is way off track in limiting rising temperatures, says the UN. Following the work of one pastor in Burnley, trying to help the increasing number of people desperate for help with their mental health. And Scotland's cricketers struggle in their first appearance in the main draw of the T20 World Cup.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, Ben Stokes is back in the England squad for the upcoming Ashes series after recovering from injury and says he's ready to take on Australia.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. How desperate would you have to be to sell your child? That's what some families in Afghanistan are resorting to as the country faces the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world, according to the United Nations. Since the Taliban seized power in August, a record 22.8 million people, over half the population, face a dangerous lack of food. That's a rise of nearly 40% since April this year. International aid, which propped up the country's fragile economy, has been stopped as the world debates how to deal with the Taliban regime. Yogita Limai's report from Herat contains distressing details and images from the start.
This is what starvation does to a country, to its tiniest lives. 6-month-old Usman, Habibur Rahman, born 3 months ago. Afghanistan was barely surviving before the Taliban took over. But now, foreign funds which propped up this country have been frozen, putting at least 1 million children at risk of dying. In this ward, 1 in 5 will not make it. Usman weighs less than half of what he should. His father among millions who have no work. Usman's mother told us his twin is in a room next door. This hospital is full. Some babies are already sharing a bed. While we were there, 6 more children were brought in. It's the only facility for hundreds of miles, because without foreign money, most hospitals are collapsing. Doctors and nurses, among masses of government workers who haven't been paid for months. 1/3 of the country's people don't know where their next meal will come from. We travelled out of Herat to a rural settlement. Tens of thousands displaced from remote provinces by decades of war and severe drought. No means of income, barely any food. Some days, families here don't eat. They've sold whatever little they had. And now, some are forced to do the unthinkable. This baby girl has been sold by her family. We're hiding their identity to protect them.
دیگه قاجان اصلا ولی قاجان اصلا شده کشنی ما خرج کرد کشنی کاش که من خرج کردش لیسا خرج کردیم وای.
Her husband used to collect rubbish, but even that earns him nothing now.
فدا قوستا غراكيم نبرد نور ما يدولوج التورنا استوسم كلام نورنا قولي هيت شيء من وديت انا قولي كذا هذا غير ده شفوج ماشي ده تسلور ماشي كشني ده صار فدا غرازي ده كان لا بس يالتا وايدا ستورز تيريج تنزلز متيريج مجبورين ياخذوا كانس.
Once the baby is able to walk, she'll be taken away by the man who bought her. He's paid more than half of the £400 she's been sold for. That'll get the family through a few months. They've been told the girl will be married to his child, but no one can be sure.
We know there are other families here who've sold their children, and even while we've been here, another person came up to one of our team and asked if we'd like to buy their child. The desperation and the urgency of this situation is hard to put in words. There is no more time left to reach the people of Afghanistan. It cannot wait while the world debates whether or not to recognize a Taliban government.
Nearby, aid agencies hand out parcels that might save some children from hunger. Alone, they can't provide for the staggering needs. Giving the Taliban money without guarantees on human rights and how the funds will be used is dangerous. But Afghanistan is sinking fast. Millions here will not survive the winter. Yogita Lemay, BBC News, Herat.
Well, let's speak to our Afghanistan correspondent Sukunda Kamani in Kabul. Sukunda, Yogita's report is so shocking and distressing. You can see the people of Afghanistan are desperate for help, but the international community wants to make sure the money goes to the people and not to the Taliban.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, some humanitarian assistance is arriving in the country, but because of the sheer scale of the crisis, it's simply not enough. Back in September, more than $1 billion was pledged by the international community, but so far less than half of that has materialised, and we've been seeing the hunger spread from the more rural areas that you saw in Yogita's report there to urban areas too, and that's partly because government employees haven't been receiving their salaries. They weren't even paid them in the last few months of the previous government. Meanwhile, families and businesses have been unable to access cash because Afghanistan's reserves are frozen. Now, as you say, the international community is in a dilemma because on the one hand, they want to help ordinary people, but they don't want to prop up a Taliban regime that for the moment, for example, is still yet to allow teenage girls back to school. But Afghanistan has always been a country deeply dependent on foreign money. For example, previously, around 75% of all public spending came from foreign grants. Now, what happens next is a massive question, really, for both the international community and for people living here. The UN is trying to set up a fund to funnel cash directly to some vulnerable Afghans, but it's a deeply troubling time.
Sukunda Kamani in Kabul, thank you. The Chancellor will announce an increase in the national living wage in his budget on Wednesday. The current rate, which applies to workers aged 23 and over, is £8.91. That will rise to £9.50, which is an increase of 6.6%, double the rate of inflation. The change will affect millions of low-paid workers, but Labour say much of the increase will be swallowed up by tax rises and cuts to universal credit. Here's our political correspondent, Alex Forsyth.
Behind the Treasury's closed doors, the budget plans are being drawn up. But while the official announcement's still days away, details of spending plans have started to emerge. Today, news of a wage rise for some of the lowest paid.
Cost of living is a really important issue. The key thing is that today's announcement, an extra £1,000 a year for people on the national living wage, is a really important protection against those pressures, and it helps to make sure that every family in the country where people are in work can really see that this is a government that's on their side.
People working in retail or hospitality, care or maintenance are among those who will likely benefit. Those aged 23 and over will see wages rise to £9.50 an hour from April, with increases for younger workers too, welcomed by some in Birmingham today.
It's good news for everyone, really, especially people that works in care works and cleaning jobs and things like that.
Well, it's a shame it's not more, but it is going to help, yeah.
I think it's good, to be honest, because with that money adding up, it's going to do a lot for a lot of people. Minimum wage has to always increase, to be honest.
But for Hetty, who runs a brownie business in Gloucester that we visited at the start of the pandemic, it's an extra challenge after a tough time and could mean costs are passed on to customers.
It will mean that we'll have to increase our product prices, and it does make it difficult for when I want to reward my team for their hard work by giving them pay rises, and it still feels like a pay rise for something great they've done rather than because the government's told me I have to.
With the economy moving again after COVID, there has been pressure on the government to help those struggling with rising bills and rising prices. Part of its answer is pay going up. The government says it wants to move to a high-wage economy where people earn more to help with household budgets. As well as today's announcement, the Chancellor's hinted that public sector workers could be in line for a pay rise too. But critics say it isn't enough, given that some support put in place through the pandemic has ended and people are facing tax rises too.
But what the government have announced today is going to be swallowed up by the tax rises they've already announced, by that big cut to universal credit, and because people are already seeing big increases in the cost of living. So it's just more smoke and mirrors for the government.
There will be more to come from the Treasury on Wednesday, when the Chancellor will set out not just who might benefit from this budget, but how he plans to keep the books balanced. Well, we've had a host of announcements from the Chancellor in the past few days, and that's before he's even stood up to give his budget. And that did prompt a bit of a telling off from the man who keeps the rules in the Houses of Parliament earlier on. But while we've heard a lot about what the government wants to invest in, we know that this is a Chancellor who is mindful about how much has already been spent during the course of the pandemic. So you should expect to hear more about public finances, and there won't be money for all. So the key question the government can expect to face is whether the choices it makes around tax and spending are going to help those who really need it the most.
Alex at Westminster, thank you. Among those announcements ahead of the budget, the government says it will spend just short of £6 billion in an attempt to clear the record NHS backlog of people waiting for treatment, tests and scans. More than 5 million people are waiting for hospital treatment in England, with hundreds of thousands waiting more than a year. The extra money will be announced in Wednesday's budget, and it's been welcomed by health leaders. But they say it won't solve the problem of staff shortages. Here's our medical editor, Fergus Walsh.
Test, test, test. Early diagnosis is a key part of improving health outcomes, but the pandemic has seen a growing backlog of patients waiting for MRI, CT, ultrasound and other checks. At least 100 one-stop shop community diagnostic centres are to be set up across England, which includes 44 already announced.
What that really means is investment in physical things that are really going to make a difference in tackling that waiting list. So things like, the community diagnostic centres, buying those CT scanners, for example, for more checkups and tests, investment in equipment, in beds, in buildings, in surgical hubs, and investment in IT.
The extra £5.9 billion for the health service in England may be spread over 3 years. The full details will be in Wednesday's budget. That's in addition to £12 billion for UK health spending announced last month, which will be funded by a new national insurance charge. Bear in mind that £192 billion was spent on health last year in England alone, and it now accounts for 44% of public service spending, up from 27% 2 decades ago. Health analysts say the NHS needs a huge increase in modern, high-tech scanners.
Compared to a country like Germany, we have only a third of the number of MRI scanners that they do for their size of population, which means that despite the government's additional investment, there's an awful lot of ground to make up.
Staff shortages are another worry. 2 years ago, there were over 100,000 vacancies across the NHS. It's now fallen slightly, but is still over 90,000, around 1 in 10 of all posts. And a record 5.7 million people are waiting for hospital treatment in England, like David Warren, who's been on the list for bowel surgery for over a year.
The longer it goes on, the more resigned you get to the fact that it's not going to happen. And it can get depressing, your life's on hold.
Waiting lists are rising by around 100,000 patients a month, and despite all the extra funding, are set to get worse before they get better. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The government's latest coronavirus figures show there were 36,567 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means an average of 45,100 new cases were reported per day in the last week. There were 8,239 people in hospital with COVID as of Friday. 38 deaths were reported. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. On average in the past week, 135 deaths were announced every day. The UN has warned that greenhouse gases reached record levels last year, despite the economic slowdown caused by the pandemic. The report suggests a target set by countries 6 years ago to limit the rise in the Earth's temperature to 1.5 Celsius is not being met. The warning of worsening global warming comes just days ahead of the COP26 Global Climate Conference in Glasgow. Our science editor David Shipman is here. So, David, the UN says the world is way off track when it comes to limiting the rise in the Earth's temperatures. So
that's right. It's looked at all the promises made by different countries to tackle global warming and added them up and concluded pretty bluntly that we are way off track. We're going in the wrong direction, that emissions, in fact, are projected to rise over the coming decade rather than fall as the science demands, and that means that they calculate we are still on course for warming that'll take us into pretty dangerous territory later this century. Now, it is still possible that the biggest polluter, China, and maybe some others who haven't reported yet, will come up with spectacular offers in the coming days. But unless that happens, it's looking more likely that the conference won't be able to deliver the kind of transformation that many are hoping for.
And when it comes to efforts to raise the money for poorer countries to deal with the effects of climate change, that's not going so well either.
Well, exactly. I mean, 12 years ago, there was a promise made to the poorest nations on Earth that by now they would be given $100 billion a year to help them cope with climate change. And after all, they're the ones who've done least to cause the problem. Well, we've just heard today that that target almost certainly won't be met until 2023. There's a lot of disappointment. And it's maybe one reason why the Prime Minister's been saying today that when it comes to the talks, they're touch and go.
Okay. David, thank you very much. Our time has just gone 6:15. Our top story this evening. The UN says Afghanistan is facing a catastrophe. Some parents are forced to sell their children to buy food. Coming up, a Facebook whistleblower tells MPs we are subsidising hate.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel.
As the government announces new funding today to try to deal with the backlog in the NHS, mental health services in England have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. NHS figures in June show there were nearly 400,000 new referrals, up nearly a quarter from June 2019. And in East Lancashire, urgent and emergency mental health referrals, the most serious of cases, almost quadrupled in July compared to the same month in 2019. The picture is similarly stark in other deprived parts of the country. Though in England as a whole, they've remained roughly stable. Our special correspondent Ed Thomas has returned to Burnley, where the Lancashire and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust is under increasing pressure. He's been following the work of local pastor Mick Fleming, who supports some of the area's most vulnerable. You may find some of Ed's report distressing.
I've really worked hard for you this afternoon.
Inside a closed-down gym in Burnley, now reborn as a church, the desperate seek refuge.
No, he's gone over, hasn't he? Has anybody rung out? Have we rung an ambulance? Every other person I meet is struggling with one form of mental health or another.
I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and anxiety.
To come out of a psychiatric unit.
To the street.
To the street.
Whether that's anxiety, paranoia.
Staring at me all the time.
Unable to cope in everyday life.
I feel lost. I want to be human again.
It's not just here in Burnley, it's all over the country. And the people who suffer most are the ones at the bottom of the pile, always.
I don't think I can do it. It's too hard.
Come on. Come with me.
Every week, hundreds climb these steps.
It's all right.
Tonight, the church stays open for John.
Paulie's got mental health issues.
It's so horrible and nasty towards me.
If I lock this door, come and sit down here. Come and sit here. Come on. He dies. Come on, tell me what's happened.
John's paranoid.
Come on, I want you to take a deep breath.
He needs urgent care.
Take a deep breath. Take a really deep breath. All right.
I'm panicking.
So tell me what the big panic is. What's the big one?
Because I'm sick of this happening. We're across the road.
All right, OK. Come on.
I've just had enough. It's been going on too long.
Before this, John said he rang his GP for a prescription, but was told to call back in 48 hours.
Nobody else has listened. He's the only one that ever actually does sit down.
It's all right, John.
I know, but I'm a dirty mess.
John says he's not seen a GP all year.
You don't know what to think, what to do, who to speak to. People look at you like you belong in a lunatic asylum when you speak about your mental health. It's like when they don't realise there's thousands suffering.
We're at Church on Street. We've just had a telephone call.
I just don't want to live anymore.
Yeah, we just took an overdose.
Well, you do know I'm going to have to ring an ambulance, don't you?
This evening, Pastor Mick received 3 calls in an hour from people at risk of suicide.
Well, she's only just took them.
But he can't answer every call.
I didn't answer the phone, and I got the message that if you don't answer the phone, I'm going to kill myself. And they did.
Help also came too late for Robert.
He was a really kind-hearted person.
He struggled through lockdown. 2 weeks after Joanne asked for support, he took his own life.
The day he killed himself, I had a phone call from the mental health team. He was like, can I speak to Robert Ryan? I was like, well, he's not here no more. They went, what do you mean? I said, I've just found him dead. They said, you're a bit late, aren't you?
And what did they say?
I'm so sorry to hear that. I wish I could have got back sooner. And it feels like it's my fault because I didn't get the help quick enough for him.
And now she can't forget.
You know, I can see the flashbacks in my head all the time. It's like, it's always reminding me of, I can see him every day in my head. When I get up, when I go to sleep. I don't think I can do it. It's too hard.
If Robbie had had early help,
I think he would have been all right. He would have still been here.
what has COVID done to this town, this country?
I think it's made any issues for people that are already struggling 10 times worse. Services are overstretched, overworked. You can't always help everybody.
I can't spell good, I can read okay, but...
During lockdown, Robbie was admitted to a psychiatric unit after trying to end his life.
Is this all you've got in life? Yeah, just a bit of loose change.
After 6 months, he was released yesterday without accommodation.
Where did you sleep last night?
I was at some old guy's house, didn't have no gas electric, he was smoking gear, so I just ended up going from there, walking around town all night.
He's come out of a psychiatric unit.
To the street.
To the street.
24 hours after being released, Robbie is close to crisis.
Confusion, upset, suicidal. Exactly designed it to make me do it because they don't want me here no more. But I'm just trying to better myself. I just want a better life, that's all I want. I'm sick of this.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. You feel left behind because you can't get any help.
So what do they do?
Well, they turn to addiction a lot of the time.
And that means they're seeing more of this.
No, he's gone over, hasn't he? Can you remember how to do the naltrexone?
And then you give him another one.
Up to 5. He's all dead, him, Ed.
The most vulnerable here, at risk of losing their lives.
He's overdosed him. So people don't like to see that because it's outside our front door and everything, but that's the reality of every city and every town in this country. And I'm sorry if it offends people. But they're dying.
Weeks after being referred, John has been unable to speak to the mental health team.
Well, it's non-existent, my future. I don't really want to live no more because my mental health's that bad.
With Joanne.
Joanne is being supported by Church on the Street. Robbie was placed by Burnley Council in a B&B. Within 72 hours, he was readmitted to a psychiatric unit. Lives changed forever, struggling for mental health care.
It's non-existent in my mind in this country now, because of where everybody's been treated and all this coronavirus and all the excuses. Because that's all they are, aren't they? Just using excuses.
Ed Thomas reporting there. And tonight, NHS England told us they urge anyone who requires help with mental health to come forward. Details of organisations offering information and support are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 08000 155 998. More than a third of the world's population are active users of Facebook and its other social media products. It's an astonishing figure, and the global tech giant has been facing serious allegations about its impact on society. A former Facebook manager turned whistleblower has told a committee of MPs that platforms like Facebook are literally subsidising hate. Rory Kethlin-Jones reports.
Facebook, a corporate giant used by 2.9 billion people, an empire which includes Instagram, WhatsApp and the virtual reality business Oculus. But now that empire stands accused of putting profits before people.
Francis, we're delighted that you've been able to make this trip to be in London and give evidence to us.
At Westminster this afternoon, Frances Haugen, the whistleblower who's made that charge, told MPs and peers what she'd learned inside the company. She said events like January's storming of the US Congress were made more likely because of the way Facebook was designed.
The algorithms take people who have very mainstream interests and they push them towards extreme interests. You can be someone center-left and you'll get pushed to radical left. You can be center-right, you'll get pushed to radical right. You can be looking for healthy recipes, you'll get pushed to anorexia content.
She described how Instagram facilitated bullying, which would follow children home from school so that it would be with them day and night. And she put much of the blame on Facebook's founder.
You know, Mark Zuckerberg has unilateral control over 3 billion people, right? There's no will at the top to make sure these systems are run in an adequately safe way.
Frances Haugen's testimony comes just as politicians here seem united on the need to rein in Facebook and other online giants. But exactly how a new law would work, well, that's far from clear. The whistleblower told the committee that what was needed from Facebook was complete transparency about its inner workings. Tonight, the social media giant had this response.
I would encourage people to look at what the actual facts are, and hopefully they can see that this is something that this company prioritizes. And let's be honest, it's in our financial interest to make sure that people have a good experience on our site.
Frances Haugen has now taken her allegations about her former employer to politicians in Westminster and Washington. But while Facebook's reputation has certainly been damaged, so far its finances remain very healthy. Rory Kethlin-Jones, BBC News.
Cricket now, and all-rounder Ben Stokes has been added to the Ashes squad that will head to Australia next month. He's been given the all-clear by his consultant after a second operation on a fractured finger, which he broke in April. He's also taken time out to focus on his mental health. Meanwhile, it's been an historic day for Scotland's cricketers playing their first match in the final stages of the 2020 World Cup. But it didn't go quite according to plan, as Joe Wilson reports.
There's never been a more significant occasion for Scotland's cricketers. To get here has demanded dedication, inspiration, qualification. They've now earned games against some of the world's highest-ranked nations, and that includes Afghanistan. For Afghanistan's men's team, at least, cricket has meant global connection and rapid rise. The future is seriously uncertain. In Sharjah, their batters enjoyed themselves. But there's Mark Watt to spoil the fun. Zazai gone. Scotland are never down for long. Neither, however, was the ball. 11 sixes in Afghanistan's 190. Scotland follow that. Sadly, they couldn't. Tough enough facing Afghanistan's spin bowlers, but then the wicketkeeper holds a catch like this. The match became Afghanistan's occasion. 60 all out. Ouch. Well, that is World Cup cricket. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
Right, let's take a look at the weather. Darren Bettis here. Hi, Darren.
Hello there, Fiona. It's been a day of sunshine and showers today, but really over the next few days, we're likely to have some stronger winds. They're coming in from the southwest, mind you, so it's going to be very mild. But with that mild air, we've got the chance of some rain, which could be quite heavy across some western areas. And the rain-bearing clouds are looming large on the satellite picture here. This lot is going to be streaming our way. Ahead of it, we've still got some showers around, a few heavy ones at the moment across parts of Scotland. A lot of those will tend to fade away, and then everything gets swamped by that cloud coming in. Rain arrives into Northern Ireland. It gets wetter later across western Scotland. Rain over the Irish Sea into western parts of England and Wales as well. Ahead of it, though, we will have some clearer skies for a while. In eastern England, eastern Scotland, temperatures could slip away to 5 or 6 degrees. That rain, though, will soon clear away from Northern Ireland in the morning. We've got a spell of rain running eastwards across Scotland, northern England. Not a great deal of rain further south, and most of that rain is gone by the afternoon, leaving us with a lot of clouds, some drizzle around some western hills, get to the east of high ground, and we could get some sunshine coming through. There's quite a strong southwesterly wind. Look what it does for the temperatures. Widely 16 or 17 degrees, quite a bit warmer than today for the northern half of the UK. By the end of the day, most of the rain is sitting to the northwest, but that weather front will take the rain further into the UK as we move into Wednesday. And all the while, you've got the winds coming from a long way south, hence those temperatures being above average for the time of year. But there's some stronger winds. There's still some rain around on Wednesday, and mainly affecting perhaps North Wales, Northern England, especially the northwest of England. Maybe we'll get a bit wetter through the day for Northern Ireland, central and southern parts of Scotland. Heavy rain over the hills, particularly southern uplands and into Cumbria. But where it's dry across the Midlands towards East Anglia and the southeast, there'll be some sunshine, and temperatures here could reach around 18 Celsius. Not too bad at all. Fiona.
Dan, thanks very much. A reminder of our top stories this evening. The UN says Afghanistan is facing a humanitarian catastrophe. Some parents are forced to sell their children to buy food. And here, an increase in the national living wage to £9.50 an hour will be included in the Chancellor's budget on Wednesday. That's all from the BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we can join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.
Hello there and welcome to Sports Day. I'm Gavin Ramshaw. Beware Australia. England have their talisman back. Ben Stokes is included in the Ashes squad for the series next month. Scotland are skittled in Sharjah. They're outclassed by Afghanistan in their T20 World Cup group opener. And what's also coming up in the programme? A big challenge for Lewis Hamilton. He's pipped by the Red Bull of Max Verstappen in Texas as the F1 season builds to an exciting final few races. And the future for Jamie Chadwick, even after winning her second W Series title. We'll be talking to her later on. Hello there and a very warm welcome to Sports Day. England's cricketers have been given a timely boost ahead of the Ashes series next month in Australia. Ben Stokes is back in the squad after being given the all-clear following his break from action to recover from a fractured finger and to prioritise his mental health. It's a move that's gone down very well with the fans and the players, including Test